What's up, hockey fans and hockey fanatics out there? Welcome to the Hockey Lounge, episode 24, 2-4. Get a beer case of 2-4. It is Wednesday, August 11th, 9 p.m. when we're going live. My wingman, Apple, is in the lounge tonight. He's got his Devils jersey on. Not sure why, because they still reek. We have a special guest in the lounge tonight. We have Nick Berlansky from Tip of the Iceberg and his new podcast. We'll get into that later. Hockey Hotbed. Nick, welcome to the lounge tonight.
Welcome. Thank you guys for having me on. Nick, Apo, it's great to be here. I know I've talked to Nick in the past about the Pittsburgh Penguins, so I'm excited to sit here and talk about the whole league, or at least the Metropolitan Division with you guys. I'm excited to be here and happy to talk hockey in the offseason.
Awesome to have you, Nick. I know we've been trying to get together here for a couple months after myself being on Tip of the Iceberg, and that was a great time. And that was right before the debacle, what happened in Pittsburgh. So great to have you on. So let's talk about the NHL daily wrap-up today, guys. Sad news coming out of the NHL last night with the passing of Tony Esposito, longtime Blackhawk. And I know that, a lot of hockey fans out there, even myself, he retired in 1984. I was only 10 years old at the time, but just that hair, the mask, that logo on Tony. I remember always getting hockey cards, OPG cards from Tony Esposito. And he definitely was one of those guys where, and Apple and I were talking about this, Nick, offline here before we got on. You're playing road hockey outside and maybe you're in net and you want to be Tony Esposito. You're making that save. So that's some sad news. What are your thoughts on that, guys? The sad passing of Tony yesterday. Apple.
Sad day for hockey. Of course, he was. You hear everybody talking about Tony. He was just a great guy. Forget about all the stuff on the ice, but he was just a phenomenal human being. And I saw some pictures today with him and Marty at when Marty played with St. Louis at the one of the outdoor games and stuff like that. He had nothing but good things to say about him. But on the ice, he was phenomenal as well. But I think he's being remembered a lot for his off the ice because it sounds like he was a really great guy. Big loss for hockey.
Yeah. Great ambassador too once he came back with the Blackhawks. But Nick, you're a youngin than us here, so
I definitely didn't get the opportunity to see Tony play, but all the off the ice stuff, everything that people have said about him, I've been able to sit back and just enjoy some of the stories that people have told about Tony Esposito. I read Gordie Howe's biography this past year, and he had a lot of awesome things to say about Tony. So unfortunately, I was not old enough to watch him play, but definitely seeing all the heartfelt remembrances going out online. And I just wish that I was old enough to see him play. Honestly, a lot of people that I wish I was old enough to see play, but Tony is definitely high on the list there as well.
Well, if you ever want any background on any of the players, App is a little older than both of us, so maybe you give him a call. Okay. Wiser.
There you go.
All right. So we also have some signings in the NHL, a few of them today. There was a big one that went down at 6 p.m. today. Just going to show the viewers on the screen here. Just pull that up. Give me a couple seconds here. We'll share with everybody here. Just 1 second. Bring that up. All right. Sorry, guys. 1 second. Just bear with me here. I had it up, and then all of a sudden, bang, it's gone. So just give me 1 sec. So Sam Reinhart signed today, guys. Do you have the info on him while I bring it up?
No, I don't actually. I don't.
Okay.
No, I don't.
No problem. No problem.
but he's one of those guys that we've talked about him before on the show that they just don't understand what the Sabres are doing. They got a talented kid there, and they're just like, that's it. They got rid of him, and Florida's smart to re-sign him because the kid's a good player.
For sure. Here we go. We got it now, guys. Sorry about that.
Mm-hmm. And you know for a fact that Jack Eichel's sitting there just real mad that his buddy Sam Reinhart is now moving on and has his deal and he's set to go, and he's still sitting there getting ready to get on the operating table.
For sure. Yeah, you got it. All right. So here we have, so we see that there. We have Sam Reinhart at a 3-year deal for $19.5 million, $6.5 million cap hit. Tyler Benson, again, signing a 1-year deal for $750K for the Edmonton Oilers. We have Andrew Pertoliski for $750, again, 1 year. And then we have Neil Pionk, which is an interesting signing. Nobody really knew who he was last year, but he came to be a steady D for the Winnipeg Jets, and he signed a 4-year deal with an average cap hit of 5.8. Any thoughts on that D? Again, 26 years old, just came out of that, playing out of Manitoba, I believe, a couple years back. A lot of people like his game. He's got a little bit of offensive player, plays with some grit. What are your thoughts on that signing for 4 years at that type of money?
I like the signing. I thought he's a pretty good steady player. Good defenseman, like you said. He's got some grit. He's got some offensive upside. But for my liking, 5.8 mil a season is just too much for me. I'm sorry. He's at best a middle pair D at best.
Right.
So that's a lot of money to pay for that.
For sure.
It definitely feels like it's a gratitude signing there, because if you look before last season, it was Neil Pionk and his band of merry men, as my co-host Nick Corral likes to say, because he was the only one there that actually played defense. And now, luckily, he's got a little bit of help. They brought in Brendan Dillon. They brought in Nate Schmidt over the offseason, and some other guys have started to step up last season. So luckily, he has some help there now. But at the same time, it feels like a little bit of that cap hit was gratitude signing, saying, hey, you carried us on defense for a couple of years, so here, we're going to throw you a couple, probably an extra million that he probably actually should have been signed for.
Right, and you know what? The Jets made a couple additions on free agency with a trade too as well. So they're looking at, more of a stable 4 than they have in the last couple of years. So we'll see where the Jets go from there. We do have a comment again. Like I said, I think Teeps is around, and this one is for you, Apple. When is Apple doing a meet and greet? I need my Hockey Lounge poster signed by Apple. So there you go.
I think we'll have some details. We'll be out in the public in the next little while. Don't worry.
Right. Just look for the large security caravan following Apple, guys. All right. So the Metropolitan Division. Nick is from Washington. He has a podcast called Tip of the Iceberg, him and his co-host Nick as well. And then he has Hockey Hotbed. But
everybody named Nick's a Penguins fan?
You got to sign up, and you got to be a Nick to be a Penguins fan, I guess. Yeah. But with that, looking at the Metro Division and the ongoings the last couple of weeks, free agency, whatnot, this year being back to normal, divisions back to normal, being able to play all 32 teams, road trips, all that fun stuff. And some of the signings that went down and some of the signings that didn't go down for some particular teams, we're going to start off with the Philadelphia Flyers. And the reason why I'm looking at the Flyers is they made some significant moves to change the look of their team. And so what are your thoughts in terms of bringing in, they brought in Ryan Ellis. Okay. They traded Jacob Voracek. They just signed Carter Hart to an extension. They brought in Ruotsalainen as well, okay, from Buffalo. They're shoring up that back end. A little bit of a different look. Sorry?
Keith Yandel as well.
Keith Yandel as well, right? So the back end has a different look. They made the trade with Columbus. They also brought in to back up the backup Carter Hart. We talked about this the other day, Martin Jones, instead of having Brian Elliott there. So what are you guys' thoughts on Philly, what they did in the offseason? Where do you see them falling in the Metro going into the new season here?
You want me to take it?
Go ahead.
I think they're a better team than they were last year. Like you said, they shored up the defense by getting a couple of good defensemen there. They're improved, but I probably penciled them in roughly. I got them coming in second, but that's a shaky second right now because I think the whole division's in flux, as we're going to talk about tonight. Mm-hmm. I think the division is it's changing, in my opinion. So we'll just talk about the Flyers for now. I think they're one of two teams I think that have improved well this offseason. So I've got them pegged up, maybe moving up to second.
Moving up to second, Nick. What are your thoughts on the moves?
The Metro is going to be a murderer's row this year, so it's going to be hard to pinpoint where anybody's going to finish. I like the addition of Cam Atkinson. I think that is huge for their locker room. I think Atkinson was a big portion of the reason why Columbus was as successful as they were those couple of years, so I think he's definitely going to help. But, I mean, Chuck Fletcher said moves are going to be made, and moves were definitely made this offseason. I mean, you get rid of Patrick, you get rid of Gostisbehere and Voracek. Those are three guys that you were kind of, I mean, not as much Voracek, but Gostisbehere and Patrick were kind of labeled as the guys that were going to help lead the Flyers into the future along with Carter Hart. So definitely giving up on that and trying to just kind of restructure and make sure that room is ready for this season to prevent what happened last year, because they were expected to be really good last season and stuff happened. This year it's going to come up to if their defense is going to be good enough to help Carter Hart, and if Carter Hart can step back up and play like he did a couple postseasons ago. And if he does that, they'll be a playoff team. But it's really going to be up to how that back end meshes early on in the season.
Yeah, I agree. And I also think, too, that, you know, we talked about this on Monday on the podcast here about Carter Hart, if he has a bounce back season. Like you said, Nick, a couple postseasons ago, he got labeled that next Carey Price type of goalie. So we'll see how his bounce back years. The interesting part for me is the forwards. Claude Giroux, you know, he had a decent year last year, but he's taken that step back where a few years back, you know, everybody's marking him probably like top 5 player in the NHL. They also have a couple youngsters that are coming up that produced a lot of offense for them in the AHL. So we'll see how they do. Where do you see them falling though, Nick? Appa's put them second in the Metro. That's pretty aggressive, man. Like, and I also think too is Alain Vigneault is a coach that has a certain lifespan to him.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, and they also have that Pittsburgh assistant coaching there. They have Mike Yeo, they have Michel Therrien, they have, so even those guys, their lifespan, when you look at them as head coaches, they sort of run out of their time too. So, you know, that's pretty aggressive, App. You know what? I can't stand the Flyers. You know that. And I know that you can't stand a New York team, but to give them second place in the Metro is pretty aggressive. Nick, where do you think they're going to land with their moves? I know you said the back end probably has to gel here, but what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think they're definitely going to be better than last season. I mean, they finished 6th in the East, and I understand the Eastern Division last year was very difficult, but that was them on a bounce back, like a backslide, I should say. Yeah. If they're able to get the stuff together, I see them being around that 4 or 5. It's going to be close for that position in the Metro, but I see them as either the 4 or the 5 this season, at least going in, especially with what we know about the Philadelphia Flyers right now. I would say they're probably labeled as 4th, 5th if they struggle a little bit out the gate, but I would say they probably finish 4th.
Well, Teeps is back at it again. He's just saying here, Flyers missed the playoffs. Well, he's just against the Flyers now because I believe his cousin signed somewhere else, I think. So Teeps is maybe cheering for another team and he wants the Flyers out. Lucas is saying 4th to 6th at best.
I think there's going to be a few. I think there's going to be a few teams in this division that are sliding down the rope this year.
I'm not sure if there's e-transfers going to Teeps with you right now because he says Jersey's winning the cup. So I'm not sure. Like, stop the e-transfers app.
I was about to say, check his Cash App.
Exactly, right? What's happening there?
2 or 3 years, Teeps. 2 or 3 years, I'm telling you.
And I guess Teeps' cousin that's right. He signed Andrioff, signed with the Islanders. So that is Teeps' cousin. So thanks for the update, Teeps. You are definitely the guy, the eyes on the ground. You're like CP24. You are everywhere. Okay, let's talk about the Carolina Hurricanes here. I like the Hurricanes. I think they're a young up-and-coming team. But they've made an entire different goaltending combo here. Interesting. Nick, what are your thoughts on the Canes? They lost Dougie Hamilton. They've changed their goaltending look this year with both tendies. What are your thoughts on the Canes?
I mean, looking at who went out and who came in, it's by far the most extensive list in the Metropolitan Division. When you look at the fact that they just let go and cut bait with 3 goaltenders that were all pretty productive for them over the past couple seasons, and bringing in Freddie Anderson and Antti Ranta. I mean, you're really banking on the fact that Toronto didn't just blow the wheels off of Anderson completely there. And I know Ranta is a very capable backup, but Anderson, you just have to hope that coming off the injury, coming off of a lot of seasons of very much overuse in Toronto, you're hoping that he can just regain that form that he had early on there. But if you look at who they lost and who they brought back in, I mean, this team won a division last year, a division with the Tampa Bay Lightning in it. So it's definitely not something to take any lightly. But I also look at the additions of Derek Stepan and Ian Cole, one in the forward core and one in the D core, that they want to get that extra added just experience and somebody who can look at all these young players and say, listen, this is what we need to do to win, especially with Ian Cole being a 2-time Stanley Cup champion. He's going to look at him and say, listen, you want to get to that next level. You want to get to that conference final. You want to get to that Stanley Cup final. This is what we need to do. So I think those additions, plus the Ethan Bear addition, I thought was really good add there by the Carolina Hurricanes. I think overall they didn't take any steps backwards. I don't think they took any steps forward. It's hard to say with how much they changed, but I think that they stayed right about where they were, which was a first-place team last year.
Right, and they also lost, to the Penguins. Brock McGinn signed with the Penguins as well, and he's a good third-line player. They also lost Forgel as well. He went to as well. So a guy that, can play on the bottom 6, that has some speed, some tenacity, got into the corners. But it's interesting that you brought up the 2 veterans that were signed there with Ian Cole and Stefan. I'm a big fan of Ian Cole. I think the guy's just a warrior. He'll block shots with his face any day of the week. We saw that in Pittsburgh. App, your thoughts on the Canes? Because again, I brought this up on Monday with you, is getting rid of Nedeljkovic to Detroit. I really liked his game in the playoffs. I thought he was going to be the tendy for the Canes for the next number of years, and all of a sudden he's wearing a Red Wing jersey. What are your thoughts on the Canes for next year?
Well, that's why I have them slipping down a little bit, because I think they're worse off than that. We've seen here on our TVs many a night of what Freddie Anderson's about. He's not going to win you anything. He's a steady goalie. He's an average goalie, but he's not going to win you anything. I think they're worse off in that. And as you know from behind me, goaltending is the most important part, if you ask me. But the minute eater that Dougie Hamilton was on every power play penalty killing, Ethan Bear's a pretty solid defenseman, but I don't know how he's going to replace that. I think they're a little bit worse on the defensive end. And I agree with you, Ian Cole's a hell of a player. But I just think Dougie brought a lot to that team in every situation. He ate a lot of minutes.
Right.
And I don't know, how much does Stepan have left?
Yeah, I'm not, like, again, that signing there, like Nick said, is more, I think, for the room. I think the Ian Cole signing is, again, definitely for the room, but he can still play, he can still penalty kill, he can still do all those things. To me, the Freddie Anderson question mark, he has never won a playoff round in his life. He has been hurt the last little while here with the Leafs as well. And like you said, Nick, he too, a lot of load on him. He's played a lot of hockey over the last number of years for the Leafs because they just haven't had that backup. Whereas this year they had Jack Campbell, which relieved him when he was hurt. So I think those minutes that Dougie Hamilton ate up is going to be an issue on the back end. They brought in Ethan Bear as well, but to me, Bear still has to get into his rhythm as a defenseman. It's a different life in the Eastern Conference than it is in the Western Conference. It's a harder conference to play against night after night. We like to take the body out. In the Western Conference, it's more freewheel, and that's the kind of play the Oilers do play as well. So we'll see how he does. So I'm saying that they are going to take a little bit of a decline. Nick, are you in agreement to that, or what do you think?
I still don't see it, just because I feel like, yes, you have the goaltending issues. In the regular season, Freddie Anderson is fine. In the playoffs, they're going to hit an issue. But when it comes to where they're going to position themselves in the regular season, I think they'll be okay. I think Jacob Slavin is going to be asked to do a lot. I think we're going to really get to see what he can do without Dougie Hamilton there. And obviously, they're going to allow a lot more goals than they did last year. The Alex Nedeljkovic thing, I mean, that surprised me more than basically any other move. But I think they took Nedeljkovic and they had a cautionary tale of Tristan Jarry and all these other young goaltenders that have been paid prematurely, and they just didn't want to give Nedeljkovic the money for the gamble. And they thought, you know what, Freddie Anderson and Antti Raanta, if we can get those guys to play at the level that we've seen them play at points, then they'll be good. But if they show up in the negative selves that they've had, then it's a risk that Carolina, I guess, was willing to take. I don't think they finish first in this division, but I see them with enough skill on the front end, especially with Aho and Svechnikov and how deep their forward core is. I see them taking second place in the Metro.
Yeah, and again, I love Rod Brindamore. I think he's a great coach. I think he's a player's coach, and guys want to play for him. So that's a big thing too. And Don Waddell, their GM, he's a pretty smart guy. He might find some golden nuggets throughout the year to help out that back end and relieve some of those minutes that Dougie has left on the table with leaving. So the next team, again, this is a team that Apple loves to talk about, is the New York Rangers. So our beloved New York Rangers, I know that there's been a lot of speculation out there. I read something the other day that the Eichel trade is imminent to the the New York Rangers here. I don't know if that happens or whatnot. I know that Zibanejad is now being talked about going the other way, but they haven't been busy, the Rangers, this offseason. What do you think?
They've added one characteristic specifically, and that is size. And you look at that with, Barclay Goodrow's not too big, but the way he plays is big. Yeah. You look at, obviously, Ryan Reeves is obviously the headliner, and Jared Tenorti on the back end. He's the reason that Evgeny Malkin needed reconstructive knee surgery in the offseason. The guy laid a massive hit on him. So a lot of people are saying, this is the response to Tom Wilson, which with Ryan Reeves, it's hard to not look at it that way. But I think this is a response to the way that they were just completely embarrassed by Carolina the year before in the play-ins, and then seeing what happened in a strong East Division last year. They got tossed around a lot more than just Tom Wilson. So if they want to contend, they needed a little bit more of that. Now the Barclay Goodrow contract is too much, way too much. I get adding him as a player, but adding him at that cost is way too much. Adding Jared Tenorti as a third pairing defenseman, okay, it's something that if it goes wrong, you can bury it. But the Ryan Reeves thing as well, we saw with the Pittsburgh Penguins, it's nice to have him, but if you don't play him the right way, it's going to hurt your team more than it's going to help your team. So I think that's what the big thing with Gerard Gallant, who knows how to use Ryan Reeves. We do forget that he was Ryan Reeves' coach in Vegas for a while. Right. So if he uses them correctly and he plays them correctly, I think it could be to the advantage of the Rangers. But I think this team is still very young. When you look at most of their players, they still have a couple guys that need to take steps. We need to see Lafreniere and Kakko take the steps that I didn't see last year. I really didn't see Capo Kakko take a step last year. And Lafreniere was kind of as advertised at points, but for the most part, I thought he was going to have more of an impact. So if they take those steps, the Rangers might find themselves in a playoff spot, but I still think it's pretty far off for them. I think it's another year at least.
I agree 100%. They don't impress me to start out with, and they don't impress me period anyway. But I agree with 100% with what Nick just said. Yeah, they haven't shown a lot of their guys. They're young guys, like he was talking about, Kakko and Lafreniere, haven't shown yet that they're ready. They're not ready. As far as I'm concerned, even Shesterkin, like Nick, we talked about it on Monday. I think that was a big contract for not having done anything yet. So they've invested a lot in this guy. So they're probably going to ride him, and Georgiev's probably going to see 20% of the games max. Right. So I'm not sold on them. I'm not. If their number one goal this offseason was just to combat Tom Wilson and Washington, good luck in that battle, but I don't think they're going to win anymore.
Yeah, I do see a couple of things on the positive side for the Rangers, though. Again, I was not a fan of letting Ryan Reeves go as being a Pittsburgh fan. I think if, like Nick said, if you use him wisely, he will produce the minutes that you need him to play. If he's just sitting on the bench, shift after shift after shift, he's no good. Those legs get too stiff, and he needs to get out there at least, I would say, 3 or 4 shifts a period to be an impact player, because he does have some, hockey IQ and some hockey pedigree to him. He's just not all hands. In terms of Fox, I thought he, fantastic season he had last year, winning the Norris, right? So he took a really step up. They are a young team. Lafreniere, I think he started to show more of himself that we saw in the World Juniors towards the back half of the season. A little bit more confidence. Kapokako, like you said, Nick, that was the second year, I believe, in the league. I think it was, with COVID being in the middle of stuff, but he still hasn't proven to me that he's in that elite youth part of the NHL. I still think there's more. We might see it, we might not. But I don't see them really challenging for a playoff spot. The only wild card is they have an excellent coach that demands respect every shift you go out there. And he does know how to win, right? He hasn't won the big trophy, but he does know how to win. He brought an expansion team to the Stanley Cup Finals. What else do you want? So I think the Rangers will be in the battle. I just don't see them making the playoffs. The Washington Capitals. Interesting team.
Yeah.
Very, very quiet. Very quiet. Nick, they're a nemesis of the Pittsburgh Penguins. It's always Sidney Crosby versus Alex Ovechkin. Again, reading articles, all the offseason moves or whatnot. There are many sports writers out there that are already writing off the Washington Capitals and the Pittsburgh Penguins next year. They are, and the Hockey Lounge Insider, which is Apple, just to let you know that, he has written off the Caps and the Pens this year as well. But we'll talk about the Caps first here. What are your thoughts on what the Capitals have done?
I mean, they really haven't done all that much. They traded Brendan Dillon for 2 second-round picks, which was a good move. They lost Craig Anderson to Buffalo, which was their third-string goalie that doesn't really move the needle. And we don't know what's going on with Zdeno Chara as of right now. He might re-sign there. He might not. But either way, you look at what they did. They added Matt Irwin. That was basically their only real addition over the entire offseason. So, again, third-pairing defenseman, just filling out roster spots at that point. The 3 main storylines were, okay, you re-signed Alex Ovechkin. You got that deal done. You don't have to worry about that anymore. You tried to trade Evgeny Kuznetsov, and so far it hasn't worked. Okay. And then you lost Vanacek and then regained Vanacek, and now you don't know. I mean, you have 2 goaltenders that have to prove themselves still, in him and Samsonov. And I think if you had a more surefire goaltending situation, people would still be looking at the Washington Capitals as a team that won the 2018 Stanley Cup Finals and would still be threatening to be at the top of this division perennially, as they have been for most of the past decade. But I think the fact that they decided to hold pat shows how confident they are in their performance last season, even though some points it was subpar. I think they're looking at the COVID situations that they had to deal with and kind of blaming that as a key reason as to why they weren't as dominant in the regular season. And I think that they're confident with what they have. I'm excited to see Anthony Mantha for a full 82 on that roster. And I think that will be a very big addition to them in the regular season. I still think the Capitals can push for a playoff spot. I don't think they're top 2 in this division anymore, as I don't think the Pittsburgh Penguins are top 2 in this division anymore either. But I can see the Washington Capitals fighting for a playoff spot, especially late into the season, because that's just the type of team they are with Alex Ovechkin. He's a guy that, sure, he's going for Gretzky's record, but don't think for a second that he's not thinking about raising the cup the second time. And he is the type of guy that can just will his team to that, and he has some of the pieces around him that'll help it get it done.
For sure.
Yeah, I think this division is just, with the teams that were lower that are gotten, other than Columbus, that have gotten a little bit better. I think it's going to be a dogfight for the playoff spot. Like, I think the third spot and then the wild card spot, if it ends up being 4-4 this year, it's going to be up for grabs, because the points are going to be hard to come by this year. It's going to be a battle this year in this division, because the teams, when you had Pittsburgh and Washington at the top and you had the Devils and whoever at the bottom, the gap was big. The gap's not as big. It's been cut in half from top to bottom, guaranteed. So their goaltending is a major issue for me. Like, I don't think Vanacek and Samsonov. We'll see. I just think that Ovi's going to have another great Ovi year. He's another year older. Between him and Backstrom, they're going to have to work some magic.
I think again, you nailed it on the head there, App, with The goaltending is a big question mark. Samsonov, Vinnicek, they haven't proven themselves. That's huge. I still think they're going to regret letting Hopi go. I still say they should have kept Hopi and brought in one of these younger goaltenders like they have, and sort of slowly brought him in, transition that, and then, thanks Hopi for everything. But I think they don't have that number one guy. They got, let's just say, a 1A, 1B. In that, I think that dressing room with Kuznetsov, some of the stuff that happened last year with COVID, they caught a couple of times with not following protocols or whatnot, and in their hotels. I think it's a little loosey-goosey in Washington right now. But I do agree with Nick. When Ovechkin gets something in his head, he's definitely like a dog on raw meat. Like he'll be going after it. I do think that they're fallen. I do think they're not the class of the Metro anymore. But it'll be interesting to see. And I think it'll come down to the will of the veterans with Backstrom and Ovechkin, how they can pull that team together. It's going to be up to those guys there, Carlson, those three, and we'll see where they go. But they're going to be a tough one to get into the playoffs, I think, this year as well. The Columbus Blue Jackets. Wow. The changes and the players that have gone over the last couple of years is incredible. They should be contending for a top spot in that division with all the great players they've let go. What are your thoughts here, Apple, on the Jackets?
I think they're coming last in the division. I just don't think there's enough there. Yeah. You lose Seth Jones, Bobrovsky, like you were saying in the last few years, Liney. It's too much. It's too much to overcome. I just think, honestly, I think they're going to be the bottom of the division, hands down.
Right. Yeah. I was just going to say, you look at, I saw on Instagram the other day, all the players they've lost over the years, Josh Anderson, Nick Foligno,
Panarin,
Jones, Panarin, just crazy, it's will the Liney trade work out? Dubois, is he going to work out in Winnipeg? I still you sort of traded one guy for another guy with a similar soft attitude. Like, I don't think Patrick Lanny lost in Columbus. I know it's, Torts is gone, we're not, but I think this guy's going to be one of those guys that has multiple NHL jerseys by the end of his career. I just don't think he puts in the time and effort and work in the offseason to become that player. But Nick, the Columbus Blue Jackets, they were on the rise, and now
it's just complete reset button. It really is a reset button for where they're at. I agree with Oppo. They're going to finish in last in this division. It's not going to be particularly close. Now, I don't think they're going to be bad enough to contend for Shane Wright and the first overall pick. They might get lucky in the lottery, but they're not going to be worse than Buffalo. They're not going to be worse than Arizona. But other than that, I don't see many teams that are going to finish below them. They're just a team that is not quite what it needs to be to contend in a division that, if you can't contend, you're going to get smushed. And that's what's going to happen to Columbus. I mean, how can Korpisalo and Merzlikins kind of just will them to some pity points here? Maybe, but that's going to be the only question. I mean, even Max Domi, they couldn't get rid of him. He doesn't seem like he wants to be there either. Now you bring in a guy like Voracek that's played in Philly his whole career. How's he going to take to his new team? You bring in a guy like Corrali, who was a fourth liner for Boston, who was a good fourth liner, but you're going to have to ask him to play more meaningful minutes and see how that changes. I did like that they added Jake Bean and Adam Bookfist. I think those are two good young players for them. But again, for this season, they're not a team that's, I mean, yeah, they'll probably take it to the Pittsburgh Penguins because they seem to always do it. But apart from that, they're not a team that's really going to make too many people stay up late at night.
Yeah, I definitely think it's for offensive teams, it's going to be free point night when they play the Columbus Blue Jackets. And I think their biggest struggle will be scoring goals. I think that's where they're going to lock. And Voracek, he sort of, again, I believe he's going back home, Nick. He did start his career in Columbus, right? And then he went to Philly. But
Nick, I don't think when he sees what the Flyers are doing and the Flyers are getting better, and they shifted him out of here, and now he's going to Columbus, I don't see the will there. I don't think we're going to see the same Jacob Voracek.
No, well, you haven't seen him for the last couple of years. Knowing Flyers fans and app we do, and we've had some on the show here. their frustration is the Voracek, the Giroux. They want to see a change. They want the passing of the torch in Philly, right? So maybe this is the first step. But definitely the Blue Jackets are going to definitely be the beat down of the Metro Division this year.
Mm-hmm.
The New York Islanders, and Nick, I am a big fan of Lou. I love Lou. I think the guy's best GM out there. Silent but deadly, I like to call him. Right? He makes the moves. He still hasn't announced his 4 contracts that we're waiting for here. Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely silent.
Yes, silent, right? Like those aren't as we talked about this last week on the show. Like we were predicting these 4 signings to come out, I think last Thursday right? And they still haven't come out. Nick, what are your thoughts on the Islanders?
I think the Islanders, I've disrespected them the past 2 years. Last year, I predicted them to finish 7th in the East, and they definitely made me wrong. And the year prior, I said they'd miss the playoffs, and both years they went to the Eastern Conference Finals. So I'm not underestimating them anymore. They brought back basically the same team that went to the Eastern Conference Finals. I mean, they lost Jordan Eberle to Seattle, which, okay, you lose a little bit of offensive upside. You add Richard Panik. Okay, that's a depth player that seems that Lou's going to love having on his team. Listen, Lou's giving me headaches trying to read what this team is doing because he still has Johnny Boychuk on the roster, and Johnny Boychuk's retiring. So that's what, $6 million of cap space that I keep forgetting they have. But I mean, he has some deals that need to get finished. I'm not exactly sure what he's waiting for, but I mean, I would imagine Palmieri, Cizikas, both going back. Who knows? Probably Parise. I know that's kind of written in the stars. So seeing this team, a team that was 1 goal away, I guess 2 goals away from going to the Stanley Cup last year and beating what is now the back-to-back Stanley Cup champions. This team to me is the team that's going to finish in first place in the Metropolitan Division. They're going to be a tough team to play. They always are. And last year finishing 4th was simply because, I mean, that's a tough schedule to play when you play the way the Islanders do. This year, having the games more spread out, having a chance to just kind of relax in between games a little bit more, hit the reset button for this team, and having Barry Trotz in what, year 4 now of his tenure in New York, it's all going to come together for the Islanders. And I can't disrespect them again. This is the year that they actually don't perform well, and it just makes me look bad again. But I am very wary of the New York Islanders this year if I'm every other team in the Metro.
Yeah. I definitely have them in for first place. Nick knows my thought on the Islanders. We did a show where we had the top 10 odds to win the Cup next year right after Tampa won it, and I said for the value, I definitely put my money on the Islanders. They were like 18, 20 to 1 or something. But yeah, I know Lou going way back, and I think he's not I think he's not announcing those 4 contracts because he's got another play. He doesn't want the teams to know how much cap space he's got because I think he's still trying to get Tarasenko. There's a couple of players in there that he's supposedly going after. So I got a feeling he just doesn't want the whole bidding war against, because he doesn't want anybody to know what these guys have, because you're not even hearing rumors like Palmieri's camp, Cizikas' camp, Parise's camp. None of them are saying anything. Right. They would have been signed by another team by now. It's good old Lou again, and I think they're the class of the Metro this year.
Yeah,
those contracts are signed and locked in his office, right to his right.
In the lockbox, right? Right, that's right. Yeah. And I know, touching on a couple of the bigger names that he's trying to get is probably Tarasenko, like you said. You brought it on the lounge last week, is Johnny Gaudreau. That could be another player that he's looking to get.
Yeah, I told you there was rumors that there's a 70% chance that he's not going to be in Calgary this year. So and lose. He's right from there. He's from Jersey, so he's right there.
Yeah, and Sutter, the coach of the Flames, Gaudreau was in Sutter's doghouse for the second half of the year last year when he took over the team. So I believe Johnny Hockey will be wearing another jersey next year. It'll just be interesting. I said the Kings last week. I just see him going to LA, but you never know if Big Lou steps up to the plate. I do think, though, losing Everly, they're losing some offense. So I would listen. I did the same thing as Nick. You always sort of underestimate the Islanders going into the playoffs, but they play that heavy physical game. They have 4 lines that can play, and they get 4 lines that can put the puck in the net as well. Penalty kill. They have no-name defense that everybody knows now after beating the Penguins and going to the conference finals again. So the Islanders are definitely a team on the rise. And Nick, you touched on this right off the bat with the Islanders, Barry Trotz. Barry Trotz is one of the best coaches in the National Hockey League. He just got named assistant coach to Team Canada for Beijing, along with Bruce Cassidy and Peter DeBoer, and the head coach is John Cooper of the Tampa Bay Lightning. So pretty amazing coaching staff there for Team Canada. So Trotzy wins a cup, goes to Long Island and brings this whole culture and atmosphere, and that's huge. And I think Big Lou and him they understand the way hockey has to be played. Because my biggest thing here, guys, is, and we've touched on this a lot of times over the last couple months here, you got to be able to play regular season hockey, but the most importantly, you have to be able to play playoff hockey, because playoff hockey is not the same. We've seen it in Pittsburgh, Nick. It's not the same type of hockey. So, and they have that recipe for success in the regular season as well as in the playoff season. So I agree with you guys. The Islanders are definitely top 3 for me in the Metro.
Like Nick, they remind me of the Devils of years past.
Slow down. You know what? Listen with your Devils. I've already had enough. We haven't gone to them yet.
I'm getting to a point.
All right.
They weren't flashy. The Devils weren't a flashy team. They were far from it, if you ask anybody. It's exactly what the Islanders are. They're not a flashy team. They got Barzal, but that's about it, flashy-wise. They just go there. They do the job. They play the game the right way. They get the puck in deep and go work. And that's playoff hockey. And they're built for the playoffs.
Exactly. And they're so systematic that, you know what, when they're protecting it, like if they score on you first, they're shutting it down. Yeah. And that's New Jersey hockey, right?
Even if they don't score first, I said this during the Penguins-Islanders series. I said, I've never seen a team as comfortable down by 1 goal as I've seen the Islanders in this series. They go down by a goal and they're like, hey, I mean, that's fine. Like, we don't care because we're not giving up another one.
Right. And on the back end too, you know, they have Sorokin that, you know, he showed what he could do. You know, I'm not a big, like, I honestly think, you know, we're going to get into the Pittsburgh Penguins right now, and we'll leave the Devils for last for you, because I know that you're just waiting to talk about them. So I'll let you wait a little bit more. So that being said, with the Penguins, we saw them lose to the Islanders, and I honestly believe, Nick, that, and we haven't talked since then. We text each other a few times. I believe that Trotz put Sorokin in because he knew this was the goalie to beat the Penguins. I think if Varlamov was in net for the whole series, Pittsburgh would have won. I really believe this. I just think that this guy, Barry Trotz, is so smart when it comes to playing Pittsburgh and understanding what Pittsburgh has trouble against and getting back to the heavy game, Nick. The Pittsburgh Penguins, and I said this to App when they got knocked out. Are the Penguins just a regular season team now?
It looks that way. I mean, the last 3 off seasons, this is the first time in the Crosby era that they've lost in the first round 3 straight. I mean, they didn't even make it to the first round in 2020. Right. This team, they shocked everybody by coming in first place in the East last year. They shocked me by coming in first place in the East last year.
Yes.
And then to go out there, and they played pretty well down to their goaltender against the New York Islanders. I'm not necessarily sure that the goaltending decision would have mattered too much for the Islanders in that series, because the Penguins weren't having that difficult of a time scoring goals. They were having a difficult time the first 2 minutes after they scored a goal, keeping it out of their own net. And that was the issue with them. And now here's what they looked at. I mean, Hextall and Burke, they said last year was, we're going to sit back and look at what we have, try to make sure we have an understanding of what this team is before we make too many moves. They added Carter at the deadline. They added Friedman off of waivers from Philadelphia. And that was the only moves they made in season. And at the end of the season, they even said, you know what, we're comfortable with where this team's at. And you can see why. First place in the East, they went toe-to-toe with the team that went to the Eastern Conference Finals, or, well, the semifinals of the Stanley Cup, if you want to call it that. But
for sure, yeah.
They lose a guy in Jared McCann and a guy in Brandon Tanev, and they bring in 2 guys that everybody is saying are carbon copies, but a little bit less, in Brock McGinn and Danton Heinen. I don't think that's fair to those 2. I hate doing that to a player, but if you look at it, it looks like they saw the holes they lost. They said, we're going to plug it in with a comparable replacement, and we're going to run it back. Now, the goaltending, that's a conversation that's going to be happening throughout the rest of the off season. It's going to happen at the beginning of the training camp. It's going to happen throughout the regular season until it's either addressed or until one of those two guys shuts us up. But it's something that if you look at as a Penguins fan, you have to be a little wary of with Tristan Jarry coming back in his first full season as a starter. Let's not mince words about it. He has not had a full year as a starter. He doesn't have that experience. Casey DeSmith has been a backup. That's fine. He has experience being a backup in a full NHL season. This is still uncharted territories for Tristan Jarry, and it's going to be that way for another year at the very least.
What are your thoughts? And then I'm going to go back to Nick about a couple other things here.
I think they're going to struggle, but I think if they're hanging around the playoff, I'm going to throw this out to you. Tell me what you guys think. If they hang around the playoff spot, trade deadline time comes around, Chicago's not hanging in there. I'm telling you, I see it coming from a mile away. I have a serious feeling that whether in season or at the end of the season, Fleury's going back. That's my opinion. I think they just need to hang in there and hope that Chicago doesn't. I think it's the only way that they sneak into the playoffs. Because not making any moves, like Nick, you were saying that they saw what they had and they think that they're there, they want to run it back. I don't see it. I could be dead wrong, but I don't see it. Gino's a little bit older. Now he's got an injury to worry about coming off of surgery. Sid's a year older. God bless him. He's great, but I mean, the depth. The depth is a problem, and the goaltending to me is a problem with them.
Yeah, I think when Berkey and Hextall came over, the new regime back in the springtime, I was expecting to see a lot more with some of the off-season moves. I was expecting to see maybe a different, and I'm probably one of a few that wanted to hear a different voice behind the bench. And the reason why is that, again, I think in Pittsburgh, there's a free pass for what you've done in the past. In any other city, I think if you get knocked out first round or not even get into the round of 16, there will be changes. And you had two out of the 3 years you played the Islanders against the same coach. You know what to expect from these teams. This should have been it's a system problem. For me, it's the D pinching all the time. They're always activated. How many 2-on-1s do you get? How many 3-on-1s do you get? Odd man rushes are coming back. Sidney Crosby, by far, has been the best hockey player in the world for a number of years. And I hate to see that this window could be 2, maybe 3. I'm just going to say 2 years. And believe me, I listen to Mark Madden all the time, and he's saying the window's closed.
Yeah,
he is saying he said the window's closed after 2017, I think he said it was. Guy should have been traded by then. But, Malkin's like a year older, the knee surgery. Can they pull a Cooch? Can they say to Gino, okay, listen, you know what? Stay on LTR the rest of the season here. And let's use that cap space to bring in. Because, Nick, right now, if you look at their depth, Sidney Crosby's the number 1 center. Jeff Carter's number 2. Jeff Carter came in and, listen, I was ready to go buy his jersey in the playoffs. He was lights out. Love the trade. But we're talking 82 games now here.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it's difficult. And I think you can't ask Malkin to do that for the simple reason that even if you bring somebody back for his LTIR cap space that you make, you're not making the playoffs without Evgeny Malkin. And I know he's not going to be the Evgeny Malkin we saw 5 years ago, because back-to-back off seasons he's had 2 surgeries, one on his elbow and one on his knee. And if you look at it, it looks like 2 different seasons, but it's within 1 calendar year that he had these 2 surgeries. That's not easy to come back from, especially when you're 35, 36 years old and you're somebody that is a target now. Because he's a big guy, he can take some hits, but he is a target. Tenorti's in New York. You think he's going to lay off of him? No. You think Tom Wilson's going to lay off of Evgeny Malkin? No. Alex Ovechkin is going to be headhunting. I mean, not headhunting, but he's going to be looking to lay the body. Sure. And that's something that Malkin's going to have to live with. And if he's able to stand up to it, it's good for the Penguins. If he's not, that's detrimental to them. I don't think he's going to be able to sit out. I also think his pride he's not the type of guy that's going to say, listen, let me take a back seat here. He's the guy that wants to go out there and say, you know what, we're winning this thing, and I'm going to be the reason we're winning this. We saw it in 2009 with Carolina, and he's still that guy. He still has that fire. So I don't think he sits out the season, and I think the Penguins, they need him. They need him to be the Malkin of 2 years ago, even when he was on his I Am Revenge tour. They need that. They don't need the guy that came in the last season, was bad, and then blamed it on the fact that he didn't have exercise equipment in Russia. I mean, come on, you're a multimillionaire.
Yeah.
Don't make excuses. Just get better. And
plus, I don't think a 35, 36-year-old you can sit out and come back and make that much of an impact like Kucherov did.
Yeah, that's also true.
That's tough.
Yeah, you're bang on that with that too. And again, watching the Penguins for so many years now, especially with Gino, when he comes back from an injury, it does take him longer to get back to his game. So that definitely is a valid point too. If you keep him on the sidelines, who knows if he's even going to be, playoff ready at the time when the playoff, if they do make the playoffs. That being said, to me, in my eyes, he was the best player for the Penguins the last 2 games in that Islanders series. Anyways, playing on one leg, I thought he was way better than Sid too. But again, like you pointed out with the Caps, Nick, any team that's led by Sidney Crosby, he is a winner. He wants to win. Don't count them out from not making the playoffs. That's my opinion. Where do you guys see them finishing here?
I mean, with this division, and Apo agreed with me on the Islanders. Yeah, they're 1. I think Carolina is 2. Then I think it is a 5-team horse race for the last, 1 spot guaranteed, and then whatever wild card spots are open. And then, of course, there's the Columbus Blue Jackets. But I think those 5 teams, it could go any which way. And it all depends on so many different variables on each team. I mean, we talked about the Capitals goaltending, the Penguins. I mean, what do you have in net is another thing. Philadelphia, what happens on their defense? The Rangers are young. The Devils, we're going to get into the Devils. I have some high expectations for the New Jersey Devils this year, but we'll get into all that. But I think that's a 5-team race for 1, maybe 2. If they're lucky, 3 spots.
Yeah, if they're lucky, for sure.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think the Islanders are the class. I had Philly penciled in for second just because of the way they've upgraded the D, and I'm thinking Carter Hart's going to have a good year. Mm-hmm. And then exactly like Nick, the next 5 are just a toss-up.
Yeah. So the New Jersey Devils, the swamp, Fitzy, again, I would just remind everybody out there, former assistant GM in Pittsburgh. So he is building just like the Penguins did, right? So he's been really active. And I'll go to Apple first here. I know that you're on a high with the Dougie Hamilton signing, bringing Tatar in. Some re-signings with the team as well. I really like the Ryan Graves pickup. I think that's one that people are really not talking about. He slid that under the table, Fitzy. What are your thoughts here, App? Again, I knocked the Penguins, so don't say they're winning the Stanley Cup, the Devils here, okay? All right?
I told teams 2 to 3 years.
Okay.
Not now.
All right.
I agree. They needed a scoring winger. They needed a veteran up front. That's why they got Tatar. Zach was the oldest forward at the end of last year at 23 years old. You need a little bit of veteran leadership there. That's why they got Tatar. Hamilton, they went for the big fish. They were able to get him. To me, fantastic move just for the sole reason that after the season, Subban comes off. $9 million for $9 million. I'll take Hamilton over Subban any day. But you're right. The biggest one for me is Ryan Graves. That signing to me, it shores up the defense so much with Hamilton because, like we discussed before, Nick, it slides Severson down a little bit. It slides the guy down when they don't have to have as many minutes and as many major minutes. Because Severson's more of an offensive defenseman in his own end. He's not bad, but he's not great. He's not physical. It knocks his minutes down a little bit more. I think the Graves signing was just phenomenal. And to me, Bernier is a backup goalie. They might have overpaid a little bit for him, but at the time, I think they were trying to get close to the floor of the cap. But, I mean, Bernier is a pretty solid D. Blackwood's on and off. He had an on and off last year. After he got COVID, he was horrible. Before that, he was great. Mm-hmm. Bernier is a good guy to shove in there if you need to get some points because the points are going to be very valuable in this division.
Right.
So I think they're going to challenge for the playoff spot like we discussed. I think they're going to be much improved. Another year for Jack Hughes. Nico had a lot of injuries last year. He's coming back now. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of positives in Jersey. Like our minor league pool, Dawson Mercer from Team Canada. Mm-hmm. Everybody will remember Dawson Mercer, Alexander Holtz, the first-round pick from last year, Adam Foote's son,
right?
Nolan Foote. He's another kid that's apparently he's a pure sniper. He's got a rocket for a shot. I think the future's bright for the Devils. In about 2 or 3 years, like I said, I think they're really going to be challenging.
Do you see Holtz in contention to grab a spot this year, though?
I think he can. I think he can because our wingers are not that deep. It depends on how young they want to go. We're one of the youngest teams before the offseason started.
Right.
So we got a little bit older now with the offseason pickups, but they might try to sprinkle him in here or there. I don't think he's going to be a full-time player. I don't think they want to rush him because we're not winning the cup this year. So I don't think there's any reason to insert him into the lineup as a full-time player now and just possibly kill his production, kill his growth. Let him go down to Utica and play some hockey.
And Wedgwood being your number one.
Blackwood.
Sorry,
Blackwood.
I always do that. Mackenzie Blackwood, right?
Yes.
Correct? Yes. We always these Woods. You also have there's 3 Woods on that team, right? There's another
Blackwood, Wood, and Miles Wood.
There you go. So the Wood family. All right. So what are your thoughts on him? Do you have confidence that he's going to be a legitimate number one? And when we're talking 2-3 years down the road, is he going to be your 1A to get you over that hump of contending for a Stanley Cup?
I think he has the potential. He hasn't shown it for a full season yet. We're going to see. I think that's why they brought in a quality backup like Bernier to push him. It might be a show me what you got this year, or we might have to move on.
Well, Nick, there you go for Matt. This guy, he's definitely he's on the phone with Fitzy, I think, every day, planning the moves, right? But your thoughts on the Devils?
They made a lot of really good moves, and App, you talked about the Ryan Graves move, and not many people can catch Joe Sakic on his back foot, but Sakic had to do something with Graves, and Tom Fitzgerald was like, all right, listen, I'm going to take advantage right here, and he did. He got a really good defenseman in Ryan Graves to complement the addition of Dougie Hamilton, obviously the big splash. Signing Hamilton, it wasn't for this year, it wasn't for next year. Signing Dougie Hamilton is for when you want to contend in 2 years, maybe 3 years. He's going to be the guy to lead them. And that's why you brought him in for that number. And as you mentioned, with PK Subban going off the books next year, you have the money to go out and get another maybe experienced winger to complement Tatar, to help these young guys, because Tatar is the oldest player on their forward core now at 30, and everybody else is not particularly close. There's nobody really even close to him. Everybody is 25 and under, basically, if you look at the majority of them. I think Jack Hughes last year showed me that he has the capabilities to go out and lead a team. Nico Hischier, obviously, he fought some injuries. He fought COVID. He was never really the same last year, couldn't catch his footing. It was a short season. It was hard for pretty much everybody on this team. Yeah. And I think that this is going to be the year we could see what kind of a leader he is. Hopefully he's healthy, knock on wood with that. But I really liked what I saw in the other guys, the supporting cast, that I was not expecting to be there last year. A Yanni Kwokin, a Igor Sharangovich. Those guys impressed me a whole hell of a lot. I mean, they were great at points last year. And it is a young team. I think this is a team that is right alongside the New York Rangers. I'm excited to see those two teams battle it out as they mature together. And I don't think the Devils can quite push into a spot solidly, but I think they're going to threaten. And if they catch fire, especially if Mackenzie Blackwood catches fire, they might be a team that just shocks everybody. I don't want to guarantee that just because they are a young team. There is inexperience there. And as good as Thomas Tatar is, which he's underrated, he was a healthy scratch for the Montreal Canadiens in the playoffs. Right. And I think that was more along the lines of he wasn't really liked by management there. He wasn't really liked by his coaching staff. But he is a guy that'll put up 20 goals. And do it quietly, but he'll put up 20 goals. And then you look at Bernier, who in Detroit, I mean, there's not many shining stars out of Detroit the past couple of years, but Bernier was still able to go out there and be more than serviceable, especially last season.
Last season, he played well.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think the Devils, they've impressed me the last couple off seasons a lot. They've impressed me a lot, and I'm excited to see where that team goes because, listen, they're young, they're fast. For the first time, they have the ability to possibly score goals. They just need to put it together. Yeah. And I think adding a guy like Tatar, who's going to be able to show some of these younger players, where you need to go, what you need to do, I think that'll help. I think they're a couple steps away from being a real juggernaut. And with the Penguins and Capitals sliding back, it's going to be the Devils, the Rangers, and the Hurricanes. They're going to be leading this division for years to come, as long as the management doesn't screw it up. And one of those teams probably will, but at least two of them.
Yeah. that pains me to hear that, Nick, about the Penguins. But you've had a great run, and hopefully, some things Hextall does in the next little while improves the chances for Pitt to make the playoffs. But
yeah,
Nick, we were talking about you being part of Tip of the Iceberg and Hockey Hotbed coming out. Why don't you explain to the viewers what your two podcasts are about? And I'm excited for you for the second one for sure. That sounds really cool. So why don't you just let the listeners know what's going on for you?
Yeah, first and foremost, with the Tip of the Iceberg, I've been running that podcast for 2 years. We cover the Pittsburgh Penguins, everything that you can imagine, every topic you can imagine about the Pittsburgh Penguins, we try to dive into. We don't shy away from anything, and that's as App said, you have to be a Nick there. There was a time where there's 3 Nicks on the show when we had this Nick here on and my co-host Nick Horwat with me. So we have a fun time. We love talking to basically anybody that loves Pittsburgh Penguins on that show, trying to get to as interesting as stories as we can, and we love just talking about it every day. They're the team that we grew up watching, so it comes easily. It's like sitting down and talking about your childhood when you talk about the Pittsburgh Penguins for me. But recently I wanted to expand my hockey knowledge and my repertoire, and I wanted to challenge myself. So we're coming out with the Hockey Hotbed, which is a podcast that I will be hosting about all 32 teams in the NHL. Yes, even I'll talk about the Seattle Kraken. And I'm going to try to get as many voices from different markets on and just try to make it a very cohesive experience for listeners, and try to encourage everybody to learn more about the game of hockey across the league, because a lot of people like to stay in their market, and it's what you guys do. You guys branch out of your own markets, and it's a fun thing to do. It's a fun thing to talk to people outside of your market, and I'm excited to get to learn more about the game, because I do not consider myself an expert by any means, but I'm a quick study, and I've loved this game for as long as I can remember. So I'm excited to pay more of an attention. I'm excited to talk to voices from all 32 places, and even more, maybe across the different continents and across different countries as well, and hopefully have some good guests on. And I'm just excited to get it all started. We're just going to be talking about the whole league, power rankings, you name it. We're going to be talking about as much as we can about the NHL. So
right now, to follow Tip of the Iceberg and Hockey Hotbed, what type of social platforms do you have out there for people to follow you and watch your podcasts?
Tip of the Iceberg, you can find anywhere you get your podcast from, Apple, Spotify, any of that stuff. But on social media, you can follow us on Twitter at Iceberg Podcast. And my girlfriend recently told me, you should really tell people it's Iceberg as in Pittsburgh, B-U-R-G-H instead of B-U-R-G. So
there you go.
Iceberg Podcast, spelled with the G-H at the end there. You can find that on Twitter, Tip of the Iceberg Podcast on Facebook and Instagram. And for Hockey Hotbed, we don't have a Facebook, but you can follow us on Twitter at Hockey Hotbed Pod and on Instagram at Hockey Hotbed. So definitely follow along. I'm excited. Send me a message. As Nick knows, I'll talk to anybody. I'll talk as long as you want. I'll talk hockey any day of the week. So you definitely don't be shy. Just message me. I'll definitely message back, and I'll probably have you on the podcast, because I just love talking hockey to anybody who will listen to me.
Right. So you probably have to call Fitzy to get Apple on, because he does have contract, stops on it that certain podcasts he can come on, certain, right? So, and he also has his we have his autograph signings coming up too as well. So he's a busy guy. Apple is the insider of the Hockey Lounge. So Nick, it's been an awesome time tonight. Thank you for coming to the Hockey Lounge tonight. It was great info. Thanks for sharing everything with us. We had a blast tonight. Once again. All right.
Nick, sorry, I just want to say, Nick, it was a great night.
Awesome.
Thanks for a great meeting and awesome insight.
Thank you.
Fantastic. So again, if you want to be a Hockey Lounge member, hit that subscribe button below. Follow us on Instagram, the Hockey Lounge. We will see you in probably a day or so. Catch up for the NHL Daily Wrap Up. Again, stay safe, and we will see you next time on the Hockey Lounge.